So good afternoon. Thank you for joining in. This is a strategy session, part of my every other week strategy, marketing, and brand workshops. This particular session is called There Is No Success Without a Successor. Just as a brief introduction, I have helped organizations enhance their image, engage their customers, and enrich their businesses for more than 30 years. Been a chief marketing officer, part of the management team. I'm also a writer, author, speaker, trainer, coach, consultant, and for some people, it might be a little bit more interesting, a motorcycle rider and a trainer. So I help other motorcycle riders be more proficient in precision riding. So this particular session's on there's no success without a successor. And in this session, I'm basically going to be asking a series of questions to help you think about how did you get here, where are you, and where do you think your business is going? So a lot of businesses start in a lot of different ways. And as I mentioned in one of my emails during this last couple of years, there have been an awful lot of new businesses get formed. A lot of them have been for people who have decided to leave their company, start on their own. Some are just doing side hustles. Some left a business that they were in, but still doing the same job. Some have inherited businesses. Pretty typical in businesses like the trades. So any of the heating and ventilating and electrical contractors can get inherited businesses. Maybe they bought into one. Some have been a senior manager and they bought into bought the owner out and have decided to buy their business. And some have gone the franchise route, which is can be a very lucrative and profitable way of getting into business on your own. But then there's the question of why did you actually start your business? Was it just to get some extra money? Did you want to create your own company so that you could be your own boss? And I see this part a lot in the trades. So for example, someone is a heating and ventilating technician and they're not really fond of how the owner is running things. So they start their own business. It's a relatively low cost of entry. And so they decide that they're going to do that, but they've got the education, they've got the licensing. So being able to start their own company is relatively easy. Some people have inherited it and they aren't really sure why they inherited it. They've got it. They don't know why the business started to begin with their parents or grandparents, whoever it was. Some have had the lofty goal of, I want to be wealthy. I want to have a big house and I want to have mansions and yachts and things like that. And some have started it just to be able to sell it later on for big bucks. And we see that, we've seen that constantly in the tech industry. Anything that someone is producing for software, firmware, anything like that, being able to build it up from nothing and then sell it. And then some are serial entrepreneurs. They've sold one business, now they've got some money and they can invest in making a bigger business. And so those first two questions, how and why, tend to have some more specific answers to them. But did you have an end goal when you started your business? Are you planning to leave it to your company, to your family? Sorry, are you planning to leave it to your family? Are you planning to sell it? So that tends to be the legacy or leave it kind of approach. Or in some cases, and we see this a lot, is you start your company, you work at it for 30 years, and then you die. You haven't really thought about an end goal of what it is that you want to do with that business. What is it going to mean to you? What do you want to get out of that business? And so in that process of how and why you started the business and your end goal, there had to be some sort of goals along the way that you wanted to have, that you wanted to take and be part of your life, um, and make sure that that business is successful. Um, are you actually making as much money as you thought you would? Um, Sometimes it's the uh, independent contractor that starts their business and doesn't realize how much additional cost there is in the business to make it run. And then therefore they're not making as much money. Some contractors purposely uh, pay for a lot of their own personal activities. And in the end, there's not a lot of end profit of the company, but they are getting compensation in other manners. How's the personal time to work ratio? Sometimes that can be a really hard struggle in figuring out how much personal time to devote to your business and how much do you devote it to your work. A couple of years ago, Elon Musk said that if you wanted to change the world, you needed to work 120 hours a week. Uh, Elon Musk is successful. I think just about everybody can agree that Elon Musk is successful. But what's the cost? He is spending 120 hours a week, which does not allow a lot of time to do much else. And it's always something that I've wondered about, where some of these people are making so much money and they have these houses and places to go, but they're working all the time. So how much time do they actually have to enjoy it? So that personal time to work ratio is can be a make or break for some businesses and some owners. Is your company actually growing? And some may ask themselves, do they actually want it to grow? Because again, there are going to be expenses and costs incurred as you grow the business. I've seen it where a business starts to grow and things are becoming very successful, and then they reach a plateau. You might think $1 million or $5 million, or when you get to 25 employees or 50 employees, things change, because then you may need a bigger facility, which is going to have a higher cost. So in the short term, you're going to make less money, maybe a lot less money, as your company is growing, and you're going to go through a cycle of higher profits while you're growing, and then the profits are going to go down as you make those adjustments to adding personnel, adding facilities, adding equipment, things like that, and the profit will go down, and then it will cycle back up again. Are you stuck with trying to figure out what goals you want to have? Maybe you're frustrated with the way business is going. This time of business is unprecedented. No one can really go back to what the pandemic was like back in the early 1900s to see, but there are a lot of typical stories that come out of businesses and being frustrated, trying to figure out what to do. We had business models that were absolutely slick, just perfect. Then when the pandemic hit, companies are shutting down. That throws the whole supply chain into complete disarray. And so everybody that was relying on just-in-time businesses got tossed on their ear. They weren't sure how to proceed to the next step, where to go with that, because their business model just got thrown away. So now they have to start off doing something else. And in the process, are you even being happy being an independent? Are you happy at being an independent person with your job? And how are your employees? So whether you have 5 employees or 50 employees, How are they? Are they sticking around with you? Have they been able to find a life in your company during this last few years? Have they been there for 10 years? How are they faring in all of your goals for your own company? And then lastly, how is your family? How is your family adjusting to your owning your own business? What does it mean to you? Are they is the family able to participate in the kinds of things that you want to do and enjoy as part of your work life? So there's no success without a successor or a succession plan. So the idea is, what are you doing to build yourself up and the employees in your business? Growth requires change. Change will affect growth. So whenever you change yourself, your thinking, that will provide you with a way of improving yourself, building yourself up, building your business up. But it's the kind of thing where if you are the only person that's getting built up, that you're taking your own leadership classes and courses, and you have a coach and things like that, but the rest of your employees are just kind of stuck to trying to figure something out on their own without your guidance, that kind of leaves a hole in the business future. It doesn't bode well that you don't have some sort of way of helping your employees succeed in your business. Another question is, how much do the employees share in the direction and growth of your business? Is it something that you drive everything? You're the main person that sets the tone, sets the direction, sets the goals, the profits, all that kind of stuff? Or are you more involved with a management team? And a management team tends to be a little bit more structured. You've got department heads and things like that. Or even if you're an independent person, do you have an advisory board? Someone that you can bounce business ideas off of so that they can provide input to you, giving you ideas on direction. Because every time, it doesn't really matter who you are, where you are. Sometime you'll get stuck in your business. You'll figure out that you don't have any fresh ideas, and having a group of advisors to help you is a great thing. Whether it's a paid coach, you have a mentor, or someone, other business friends that you're familiar with, someone that you can be able to work with and get their ideas on how you should be doing things. And are you building other leaders within your business? Again, kind of goes back to, are you driving everything, or do you have a group of people that you're trying to build and help them help you grow the business? If you aren't building and growing leaders, then you're only kind of going halfway. It's only a half measure. By having the ability to bring in other leaders can actually help you there. And I know a number of guys who were, they never hired anybody who was as good or better than themselves. That always kind of gave me a struggle, because how can you ever improve? No single person has all the ideas, has everything, and has it all locked up. So even going back to guys like Elon Musk, he has surrounded himself with other people that have similar ideas and similar goals to build other leaders. You can't have a company that goes from 0 to 1,000 people without building other leaders. You may disagree with how they do that. So when you look at companies like Amazon, there's a little different approach in how they build those leaders. But the building process needs to take place. You need to have that ability to bring other people up and beyond your level. And have you learned to delegate? If you want to have a personal life, do you have the ability to hand off different tasks and functions that really aren't up to your capability. And saying that isn't quite the right word, not up to your capability, but it's things that you shouldn't be doing. You're the owner, you're the building manager, you are the person. Do you need to be doing everything? Do you need to be taking out the garbage? Do you need to be taking sales phone calls when you have a staff of salespeople? The idea of learning to delegate and feeling comfortable with that is really an important aspect. And when there are small companies, that delegation can include outsourcing. So, for example, the whole movement of virtual assistants has just blossomed over the last 5 to 10 years, especially with the internet and the ability to share business concepts and functions and things like that. So being able to outsource some of those basic tasks and functions is a form of delegation. And it can be very satisfying because then you're having someone else take care of it and you can be responsible and taking care of the more important things. What are your priorities? Is your priority getting on the phone, talking to a customer, or is it growing a business? So those are the kinds of things that you need to understand about growing a business with delegation. And is your passion working in the business or working on the business? I have a story of one company, one gentleman started his business in the construction trade, and it became very successful. There was essentially a boom in his area. His business was just blossoming, just having a great time. The problem was he was starting to spend 60, 70, 80 hours, 90 hours spending time both being in the crew and also trying to figure out how to manage the business. And in talking to him, the main thing was that his passion was being a crew leader. He loved doing construction. He really didn't have everything that he wanted to know on how to run the business, basically working on the business. That becomes a struggle for him. So he was spending all that time. Eventually, it came to the point where a decision had to be made. The business was still growing and still calling on his time, but he didn't want to do it. So instead of having a meltdown and just trying to struggle with moving forward, he hired as a president for his business. And he went back down and started doing what he loved most, and that was being in the construction process. He ran the crews, he helped build things. He loved it. The president still reports to him because he's the owner. The president still reports to him. They have business meetings, but the president handles the day-to-day business activities that he didn't want to. And that freed up his life, essentially. It's the kind of thing where you're weighed down by all of this activity that you really don't like to do. Well, there's an alternative. Goes back to that delegation part. And is your family interested in your business other than your spouse? A lot of times the kids are not interested. Occasionally they are, and they become part of it, and you can make things happen that way. But are they really interested in making a go for it? And sometimes when they're younger, they don't understand the business yet, and that's okay. But trying to get them involved and interested is a good thing. But if it's not a fit, don't force it. And then you have to start figuring out what is your succession plan. And we're seeing right now that finding employees, well, probably for the last 5 to 7 years, finding employees is really tough. Finding a buyer for your business is even harder. I have a friend who he and his wife own two funeral homes, very successful. And the funeral home business is a little unusual, but it's very much like any of the trades in that you go to school, you intern, you work for someone, and then you can buy into the business. He and his wife both went to school to be morticians. They found a place where the owners were fit. There was a nice fit between the owners and them. They eventually bought out the interest in the funeral home business, but now he's trying to find a buyer to hand the business over to as time goes on. He is now having a very difficult time. Certainly, it's a specific trade because they need to be morticians. And as they work with the universities, they can get the interns to take part in that. But then finding the intern who wants to be an employee, they've been actually having a very difficult time doing that. And then once they have an employee who seems to be interested, nobody seems to want to buy the business. So unless he and she come up with a plan over the next couple of years, a successful mortician company could just go out of business. He could sell it to a competitor or a chain or a consolidator. But I think he's hoping that someone would be interested enough in the business to be able to move it forward on their own. So I'm going to shift the emphasis here. The first part was just asking you questions and trying to identify some of the things that might be useful for you to evaluate where you are on your business, where you want to go with your business. This second part is overall peace of mind. And that peace of mind can start today as well as you move forward in identifying what it is you want to do with that business. And the first part of that, of this is the idea of a disaster plan. And everyone understands the idea of tornadoes, hurricanes, and those kinds of disasters, which are major and can be completely devastating. But those are rare. They happen, but they're essentially rare. What is more common are things like these, where you have a key employee that when they leave, it has a significant impact on your business. If they were to leave, is there someone else in the office that is able to pick up that work? Or are you stuck with it? Or you have to go back to doing the business that person, those activities that person was doing? So first off, identifying those key employees. Do they have a significant impact? What is that impact? And are there others that could be trained to take that task and that job on? You also need to identify what you do to make the business happen. And if something were to happen to you, is there someone there that can pick that up? Or are you basically stuck again? So that if something happens to you, your business stagnates or dies. And do others know what to do should you be injured or die? Having some understanding, maybe, it's not exactly something you put in the employee handbook, but there should be somebody who understands what it is that needs to be done in the event of a disaster. Now, more common things that we think about, but we also hear stories about the fact that nobody does these, is computer backups, banking backups, password recovery, all vital things. And as we see companies get hacked all the time, this is absolutely necessary work. So whether you have it in a 3-ring binder, or you have it in some other file that's secured, password protected, things like that. All of that information, the computer backups, banking backups, password recovery, that's a vital that they're somewhere else that someone can actually get to them should something happen. And then, do you know your break-even point? So the break-even point from a financial standpoint is I have all my expenses and I need to make X dollars to break even. And then everything after that is profit. And some people know it, some people don't actually. How much of the expenses do you run on? Even my business, my coaching and consulting business, I have a break even point that I need to reach before I start taking that money as profit. But something maybe a little bit deeper is, do you know your breaking point? So at the beginning of the pandemic, a friend of mine who owns a distribution company, and at the time had about 30 employees. So it was a decent sized business and was a growing business. He was, at the time, he had been on the Inc. 5000 list for 2 years in a row, which is an accomplishment by itself. 2 years in a row, and was working on his third year. And then the pandemic hit basically March of 2020. His business dropped 50% in a month and dropped another 30% in the second month. So he is down roughly 70% and still has a staff of 30 people to try and function with, as well as all the inventory and the monthly bills and all the things that are taking place. He was getting to his breaking point. He was getting to the point to say, if we lose X more dollars, I have to close. This is something that companies learned about during this pandemic time. They didn't understand what that breaking point was. And some just quit at a moment's notice. Some actually had a transition to make it happen. But the breaking point is something you need to understand. When do you call it quits? And hopefully you have time to be honest with your employees and help them work through it. And thinking of a disaster plan, think of contingencies as it relates to my friend, rapid drop and rapid growth. And as it turned out, so March was down 50%, April was down another 30%, May was even, June started to go back up again. July was, things were really happening, as it turned out that he became a vital source for a lot of supplies that people couldn't get because they couldn't meet face to face. So his warehouse business was doing very well. In fact, he went from a rapid drop to rapid growth, so that by the end of the year, he was 30% over the previous year. And given that for 3 months, he was at the point of ending the company, that's rapid growth. He had he had to figure out ways to deal with the rapid drop and the rapid growth. We never know when those will happen, but there's a lot of things that you can think about that if this changes in this industry, this might affect me positively or negatively. And that goes back to working on the business, not necessarily in the business. When you work on the business, you're understanding the relationships of industry, of markets, of the world, finding out what it is that has an impact on your business? And then, is there an ownership clause on the death or injury of you? Who gets the business? What's the value of the business? And then there's that limbo period. And is there someone who has the ability to make decisions on the business until things get settled? Companies that have partners. Obviously, if one partner dies, it goes to the other person, but then the person that dies, he's got a family or she's got a family. So what's the compensation for that? Trying to figure out what kind of value you want for that company as your breakup value is important. And it seems when you say it out loud, it seems like, well, you're putting the cart before the horse, because we don't know what the value is. But you can come up with some ratios and things that make sense about your business to see if it makes sense. So for me, the value of my business would be my clients and my lists. How much of a value is that to someone outside of the business? I'm not really sure, but there is some value in there that could be garnered, and a decision could be made on what that might be should something happen if I had a partner. So trying to understand what happens when the death or injury, or maybe you just want to leave the business. How do you actually terminate it in a successful way? Partnerships can be really difficult. So I'm wrapping this up. Been at this for about 30 minutes now. So does how and why you started your business match with where you are right now? Simple question, but one that will probably take you time to think about and write down and understand what that value is. And what are you doing to develop you and others in your company? Do you have a plan? Excuse me. Is it something where you have an employee education reimbursement program? Or are you just going to be paying for personal development, both for yourself and for your employees? And have you thought about an end game? And again, I know that people will think, well, I'm just in my business. Why do I want to think about how it ends? Excuse me. Understanding how that business ends can give you peace of mind right now in how you run your business. In addition to planning for your business, you need to plan for disasters. We just went through those, so I'm not going to elaborate on those much more. But your plan should include rapid growth and rapid decline. What is it that what do you think could be tipping points? What could be an accelerant for your business? And if that were to happen, what would you need to do? Do you need to pivot? Do you need to do something else? Can you hire subcontractors and things like that? And then, are you doing what you're passionate about? Are you doing that part in your business that you really, really, really like to do? And when it comes down to it, bring in outside help when necessary. Always useful to be able to have someone to bounce ideas off of. Again, whether they're a paid coach or consultant, or their business associates, but someone who has a good understanding of business in general. That's an important key. That you don't want to necessarily ask your golf buddies what you should do with your business unless they are business owners as well. So trying to bring that outside help is really useful for the long term of your business. So with that, my presentation's done. I want to thank you for attending, and now open it up to you guys to see if you have any questions, and how was this a worthwhile presentation? Did it make sense to you? Is it something that you can use for the future? So please feel free to ask a question.
So
You're not on.
so I'm just 1 second here. All right. Can you hear me, Frank?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm actually I gotta run pretty quick. I got a client that's meeting me here short. Actually, she's just pulling up. But good presentation. The question that I have is I've downsized with the intention of trying to possibly strategize on what I want to do and figure out contracts up with the franchise. I stuff resonated with me in the sense that I have to downscale with a purpose and still maintain profitability throughout those years to be able to pay me and support the family. But as far as time, talking about time, how much time you put into a business, I think there's also a breaking point in that as well, right? I mean, it isn't just me. It's
Oh, lost you, Eric. But I'm going to try and answer that. I think I understand where you're getting at. And you have your business, and you've had it for a number of years. And the question is, what do you do with it afterwards? What do where do you go from it?
Yeah, ultimately he has an appointment he had to step into. But yeah, he's just not sure exactly how to strategize, you know, some of these bumpy roads that he's experienced due to the pandemic and just uncertainty and, growth. There was like growth pains in there. Then there was just poor quality employees. So he's downscaled so much so that now it's like, how does he plan this exit strategy? That's appropriate for, because he's pretty much a one-man band aside from his subs. I mean, they're all, anybody who works with him in the business is a sub.
Right.
So.
Well, and that's it gets down to that question, right? How long do you want to maintain that business?
Yeah.
And maybe right now it's profitable, but you're not necessarily liking it, and that happens all the time. I see that as well. So then it tends to be, what's the next step? So maybe instead of the question of how do you exit out of the business, what's the next business? Because then that can, when you understand what your motivations are for the next things that you want to do, then that can actually answer a lot of questions about where you're at right now. Maybe somebody can buy up that franchise, and you don't have to worry about it because now you understand where you want to go later on. And
Right.
it's not, I'm not necessarily, I don't know that I'm answering your question directly about what to do right now, but it's the question of where do you want to go? I guess I always think about where you want to go drives the decisions that you need to make right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll let him know. That makes sense. I think he does need to have a strategy on his next move for sure. But I really liked your webinar. It was very thought provoking. For myself, who's prior to being a business owner, I I worked in corporate and I managed a lot of people. So the last thing I wanted to do in my own business was manage anybody. But but what you find is I'm limited. I know that I'm limiting myself because I'm having a hard time of letting go of some of these things. And but at the same time, I also felt like I had to be, an expert in everything. So I got all this extra education. I did all these extra things, and I had all these multitudes of side hustles, and I guess maybe I was just trying to find my passion more. I don't know, but you certainly gave me a lot to think about. Because I am to a point now where I'd really like to have, I've been doing this for 7 years, I suppose, just about 7 years, and I'm ready to kind of have a better trajectory for my future and plan so that I'm not quite so, bogged down with some of these other little things.
Right. And you got a lot of irons in the fire, with all the networking groups and things like that. And so it could be something where maybe a virtual assistant for you for some of the things, maybe to offload some of that. And one of the things I found within the virtual assistant industry, I guess it is an industry. You can find anyone to do just about anything. And if it's confirming appointments, setting up appointments and things like that, you can have that person. If it's someone who you want to do content marketing, someone can do that. And so yes, you're trading dollars time, but sometimes that trade is still a worthwhile. It's a worthwhile trade. You want to keep your sanity.
Right. For sure. Well, it looks like you had many irons in the fire as well in all of your experience. Can you maybe speak to a little bit of how you kind of manage that? I mean, it just looks like you have so much, or under your belt. That's a lot.
Well, it was, and I was also one of those kind of people that I like to do a lot of different things. But I did have a staff that I could delegate to, get them involved, getting them to do things. And sometimes I think all of us have a hard time delegating because you're not sure how that's going to work. And I've done delegations where it's just blown up in my face completely. But it could have been a mistake that I would have made as well, a different kind of mistake. So it's the concept of getting a delegate, getting someone you can delegate to, get them to do small projects so that both they and you build up confidence in the fact that they can do that. And so I did that for a lot of different people. And I also gave up on the fact that you must do this the way I would do this. That's a number of us were presenters. We did different things. And the other fellow had just an entirely different speaking manner, how he organized his presentations and things like that. So we would work together a little bit to make sure that the message that I wanted to get conveyed was conveyed in an appropriate manner, but I left the details up to him. I didn't need to micromanage. That's time for that.
Yeah, I don't like to micromanage either. And then yet at the same time, I'm kind of particular too.
I'm actually terrible at micromanaging because I tend to be a higher level person. I like generating ideas, and then but I need somebody to hand it off to get them to do things. It can be a challenge, but it's finding that right mix of people is also really important. Understanding that.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes you make mistakes. I've had to fire a bunch of people over my career, so I made mistakes and it's like, this isn't really going to work. So,
Yeah. I don't feel like I fail. I don't let myself fail enough. I don't do things that might result in a failure enough either. I know that too. I need to fail more
yeah,
because
I'm the
I'm
same way.
not putting
I don't like,
myself out there enough.
yeah, I don't like failing. And so sometimes I don't pull the trigger. Uh,
Mm,
and
yeah.
that could be a problem, but, you know, just trying and trying to do the different things. And I've been doing more in the last few months to get out of my comfort zone than I have
Mm,
in a long time. And it, it's it's a challenge to get out of your comfort zone, but there's a benefit for it. I see it, and
hmm.
I'm doing so.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much. This was really, really, really great. I'm gonna digest this a little bit and have to think this over. This was really great. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Well, thanks, Kristen. I appreciate it, and thank Eric. And this will be, I'll put this up so people can go through it and watch it and get some other ideas for it as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Frank. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.